Perfect.
Okay, welcome everyone to Tanya Outside In. We are halfway through, or more than halfway through the first chapter in the Holy Sefer Tanya. Okay, the first one line is Dor on page 10 by the two dots. Ach bir ha'inyan. We introduced, basically until this point, the Rebbe just really confused us by showing us that we don't know what the definition of a tzaddik or a Benoni or even a Rasha really is. And then he started to answer up where we're going, which is the Rebbe made a distinction between the inner world and the outer world, between who someone is and what they do. And that's a very, very important distinction to make, because we don't have to act according to who we are. And in the secular world, that would be considered a dishonest or not authentic. But in our world, if you internally want to do something that's not okay, and you act in a way that is okay, that is incredibly commendable. That is amazing, absolutely amazing. So the Tanya's created this not a dichotomy. He's created he's divided us into two: who we are and what we do. He still hasn't answered up what it means, the tzaddik and the Benoni and the Rasha, but that is the foundation for the answer. Okay, now the Rebbe is gonna go into about 8 chapters of introduction until he actually starts to explain what is a tzaddik. That's chapter 10, Rasha is 11, Benoni is chapters 12, 13, 14, the rest of the book. Okay. So, ach bir ha'inyan al pi ma shekasav Rab Chaim Vital Zal b'shar Kedusha. The Inyan is going to be like this. We're going to explain according to what Rab Chaim Vital wrote, who was the main disciple of the Arizal, in the Shar Kedusha, B'Eitz Chaim Shar Nun Perek Beis. L'chol ish Yisrael echad tzaddik v'echad rasha. Every single Jew, tzaddik or rasha, no matter, Yeshtei neshamois. He has 2 souls. Tichsiv, v'neshamois ani asisi. Neshamois ani asisi. That's from Yeshayahu, in plural. Neshamois, I made. Shem shtei nefashos. This is 2 nefashos. Yeah, another word for soul. We'll explain all these words with Hashem. Nefesh achas mitzad a klipa v'sitra achra. Now we're introducing the first soul, Nefesh Achas. Yeah, he doesn't call it here the Nefesh of Bahamis, although we are going to refer to it as the Nefesh of Bahamis, or the Nefesh of Chiyunis is also another word that we used to refer to it as. But here he just calls it Nefesh Achas. Mitzad Klipa v'Sitra Achra, which comes from the Klipa and the Sitra Achra. These words need to be understood. V'ya mislabeshes b'dam ha'adam, and it is enclosed within the blood of the man, lahachayos haguf, to give life to the body. Ki nefesh habasa b'damhi, because the nefesh, the soul of the flesh, is in the blood. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So, firstly, what is a nefesh? We could call it a drive, and it really is a drive. But a drive becomes manifest in lots of different ways. It's a complete personality. It has a desire, a drive, a ratzon. It has an intellect. It has behavior. It has emotions, and it has behavior. It's a complete, what we'd call in Kisva area, partsuf. It's from the top to the bottom. You could describe it as having something above its head, so to speak. It's not a physical thing, obviously, but it has a ratzon, which, so to speak, is like a crown above its head. Then it has a seichel, an intellect, which would be its head. Then it has, conceptually, then it has its emotions, which would be considered the body, yeah? And then it has its ability to act, which we call levushim, garments, which is thought, speech, and action. So we've got a diagram for it when you just look in a mirror. Okay, in fact, looking in the mirror is the most profound diagram for everything. It's literally the diagram for everything, mamash. So that's what a nefesh is. And in here, when he says neshama is a nefesh, he's not really making much of a chiluk the way I understand it. It comes from the klipa and the sitra achra. Klipa and sitra achra is very important to get this clear. These two words are not super important. I've made this joke before, but it's not a joke. A Jew who doesn't have a clear definition or doesn't know what klipa and sitra achra is like a carpenter who doesn't know what wood is. Literally. This is our job description. We are involved in klipa and sitra achra. The Yidden are the creature in the world who is involved in turning the klipa and sitra achra, raising up the klipa and sitra achra, turning it into kedusha. However, that's what we're involved in all day long. Klipa and sitra achra. So it sounds like klipa and sitra achra. The general term is that it's something disgusting, yeah. But it's really the umbrella term for everything that doesn't effortlessly and immediately allude to its creator. So now, Chevre, look around the room or look around the car. Now you tell me how much of the things that you're looking at right now allude effortlessly to the creator. If you were to sit a stark atheist in your where you are right now, is there anything in his mind that might make him have second thoughts about God existing? Is there anything in your vicinity that you can see right now that would give him second thoughts about the existence of God? Then everything that you're looking at is from klipa and sitra achra. Everything. We're turning it into kedusha right now. Your computer screen, because it's giving off words of Torah. Yeah, that's becoming kadosh. But in itself, it's from klipa and sitra achra. They are synonymous terms. They are referring to the exact same thing. So why two terms? Because they are describing to us two facets of the same thing. Two different facets of the same phenomenon. Okay, so klipa and sitra achra. What do we learn from the word klipa and sitra achra? So the word sitra achra, which translates as the other side, teaches us that this thing, klipa sitra achra, has nothing of its own. It's the other side. You've got the side of kedusha, and then you've got the other side. It doesn't have any positive definition. It doesn't have anything of itself. It's really illusionary. It's just running off the energy of kedusha, because that's all there is. It doesn't have any mamashas unto itself. It's like darkness. Darkness, it's a machlokas, but we pass in the darkness is a lack of light. It doesn't have anything of its own. So that's number one, sitra achra. It has nothing of its own. Number two, klipa, maybe number one. Klipa refers to the fact, well, it's really two things, and it's the same thing. It covers over. So sitra achra doesn't have anything of its own. Therefore, it's siphoning energy or receiving energy from kedusha, which is the only reality there is, Shem Echad. And it covers over. So you don't see the kedusha. You don't see God. You don't see godliness, however you want to call it. That's what klipa is. Klipa covers over. So now, klipa covering over, I'm not going to explain the connection right now. We'll do that another time. But klipa covering over means it's a means to an end. So klipa, we're learning two things from klipa. They are in truth the same thing, but I'm not going to explain that right now. But klipa number one covers, okay? So too, the klipa covers the kedusha. The klipa means a peel or a husk or a shell. so too klipa covers kedusha. And number two, klipa is a means to an end, meaning you want to eat the egg, you peel the shell, you throw the shell away. You want to eat the banana, you peel the banana, you throw the peel away. You throw the rind of the orange away. Okay? You throw the shell of the nut away. It's completely, it's a means to an end. It has no intrinsic value unto itself. And that end to what klipa has been created for is one end, and that is to give you bechira. And that's why, by the way, Michael like this, klipa and bechira is the same gematria, just as a side point. Klipa is there to provide you with an alternative to God that you shouldn't choose. It's there to give you another option. And there's only one other option. You know what that other option is? It's either God or you. That's it. So klipa really, the most profound manifestation of klipa is your own personal sense of being. That's really the ultimate klipa. That's really the only klipa, really, because that's the only thing that you're choosing between you and the Rebbeinu Shalom. So this soul comes from that level. And this is the point. This soul has you could call it an ego. It has its own sense of self. It has its own agenda. It's not godly. That's what it means when it comes from klipa v'sitra achra. It feels like it's an egocentric energy, and he feels his own independent existence. That's what it means, the klipa achas. My little baby. Very cute. So now it says it's mislabeshes in the dam of the man, in the blood of the man. A great moshel for this is, you ever had like batteries in like a remote control or something that you left for too long, and you open it up and it's all like leaked inside? Yeah. So you can think of it like this. The energy of the electricity is somehow stored in that juice, in the meats of the juice of the battery. So when you run out of energy, when the battery runs out, you don't see that. I mean, the juice looks the same, but somehow the energy lives within the juice. That's how it is with the blood. So it's like electricity in a sense that they call this neshama, this nefesh, they call it the dak shebagas and the gas shebadak. It's spiritual, but it's the most coarse of the spiritual. They call it the most refined of the core, the most refined of the physical, or the most coarse of the spiritual. It's the same thing. It's barely spiritual, but you can't call it physical. So it is spiritual, but it's at the very end. And that's why it can animate the body. It's compatible with the body. That's why. And that's our desire for our own sense of self. Okay. Everyone's clear? Any questions? We're all good? Okay. Okay. Umimenu, and from it, Boz Kol Hamidas Rose, Me'abi Yasoidus Roim, and from it come the four evil elements, of the whatever you want to call them. And from it come the bad midas, the bad character traits, although in this case we're really talking about pleasures, but he says midas rose, that come from, because it's composed of the four yesoidus, the four foundations, whatever you call them, which elements. Is what? Elements, thank you, the four elements, which is fire, air, water, and earth. Okay, now that sounds very babyish. We'll just talk about that for a moment. Fire, air, water, and earth is a very kind of medieval way of understanding the world. In the medieval world and before that, everyone thought that the world was created of fire. Everything in creation was made of fire, air, water, and earth. And in our generation, where we're very sophisticated, we know lots of science, we would kind of giggle at that and think, that's not nice and cute. From the old days, we'll humor it, but there's a couple of things that you should know. The Rebbe from Lubavitch said that Aish is plasma, air is gas, water is liquid, and earth is solid. So we could talk about those 4 states. There's not 3 states of gas, liquid, and solid. There's also a state called plasma, which is really it's like a gas that is charged with energy. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but it's an energized gas. Yeah, so that would. But something that I discovered with my friend just recently, and if anybody wants to look this up for themselves, you can try and this is amazingly, it's amazing. Is anyone knows the four forces that there are, Alpi physics, the 4 forces that we talk about? Electromagnetic, gravitational, then what's called the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force. So this idea of the unified field theory is basically a race to find the unifying theory of those 4 forces: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. If you look them up and find out on a rudimentary level what they are, they link in perfectly with fire, air, water, and earth. It's unbelievable. Yeah, that fire is the electromagnetic force because it repels from the earth, and also magnetic north is at the top. Water is gravitational because it pulls down. The strong nuclear force, which is upper, which resists movement. Wait, I missed. I should have said this earlier. Sorry. Before I say this, that these 4 elements, the way that my Rebbe explains it always is that you've got fire goes up, water goes down, earth resists movement, and air goes in all directions. It's opinionless. So really, those are those 4 directions or 4 modes of movement link up with the 4 forces. I'm not even going to get into that now. That's too off the topic. I find it fascinating. But those 4 forces, yeah, fire, water, earth, and air. Fire goes up, water goes down, earth resists movement, and air goes in any direction. Okay, so either way, that's what the animal soul is made of. The life-giving soul of the body is made of, so to speak, and we're going to discuss the ramifications of that right now. Okay, so he's talking about the midas ros, the bad. Again, midas means like character traits or emotions, but in this case, we're really talking about pleasures. Okay, Shabbat. Dahainu, that means kas v'gaiva miyasoda eish shenigba lamala. Anger and arrogance, these are all pleasures, remember? Yeah, anger is a pleasure, arrogance is a pleasure. They come from the foundation of eish, of fire, because it goes up. It doesn't say anything more than that. Now, I could literally, in fact, I plan on giving a share, that's a good point, on is it tomorrow? On Thursday, Parsha Shir is basically going to be on these few words of the Balatanya. Yeah, Kas and Gaiva are from the foundation of Aish, and they go up. Okay, I'm not going to get into it too much now, but Kas and Gaiva are ultimately linked with each other. Gaiva is the self-delineation of the person. See, Gaiva isn't this guy walking like this, thinking he's better than everybody. Yeah, that isn't what Gaiva is. That guy probably is also about Gaiva, but Gaiva's much more sophisticated than that. Gaiva is the erection of boundaries around yourself. It's the delineation of who you are. It's you having identified with X, Y, and Z, etc. And as a result, you've built, so to speak, a fortress around yourself. You really are something. as opposed to somebody who doesn't have any barriers around himself, like Avraham, whose tent was open on all four sides. Yeah, that's a person who isn't arrogant. A humble person is not defined. So when a person's defined as X, a person defines himself, let's say a person defines himself as an angry person. I'm an angry person. Now, he can't not, if he's arrogant, and that's the definition of who he is, he can't not be angry. Because if he was to decide that he's not angry anymore, he would be removing a definition of himself, and that would be like not being he's not being anymore. So who are you? If you're not angry, who are you? Not anyone. So an arrogant person, he has defined himself, and conceptually you can think of it as like he puts a wall around himself. The more arrogant he is, the higher, the stronger, the thicker the walls are, the more defined he is. And the more defined he is, the less hashpah, the less influence you can have on him, because he's completely enclosed in his own world. A very humble person is available to be influenced. He can also decide not to be influenced, but an arrogant person is uninfluenceable, if that's a word. Uninfluential? That's not the right word. You can't influence him because he can't let go of the definitions. And if you're saying something that would have to make him define himself differently, he can't do that. You can't teach an arrogant person because they're done. They're finished. What more is there to give me? That's the foundation of arrogance. And anger comes part and parcel of that, because if this person's got this impenetrable wall around himself and you try and break it with something, that causes anger. I'm not going to get right now. Okay. Now, Taivus atanugim yesod hamayim ki mayim mitzamchim kol minei tainug. Again, these entire books written in these few words. So the taiva, the pleasures of pleasures of this world, which would include primarily physical, like intimacy and eating. Those are the two primary pleasures. There's also sleeping as well, but this is what he's talking about here, for eating and relations. Miyasoda mayim comes from the element of water. Because mayim gives life to all kinds of pleasures. So it's very important. Remember, just whenever there's some kind of idyllic, pleasurable scene set, yeah, there's always some kind of water feature, always. Yeah, something about water that has pleasure involved in it. There's also the concept of food, like moist food. Dry food is generally considered without so much pleasure, whereas when it has moisture to it, that's where the pleasure of the food usually lies. And then in relations, kiyadua. Okay. Hoylus leitsoinus is Paris, but divine batalim miyasoid haruach. The pleasures of air are the pleasures of nothingness. There's a pleasure in talking to people about nonsense, about nothing. There's a pleasure in that. Yeah, that's a really important thing, because people talk people who like to talk about things with content find it very difficult to talk to people who talk about nothing. But you have to remember that by talking nothing with some people, you're actually giving them a lot of pleasure. I'm talking. He's talking about it negatively. I'm just giving us some ammunitions where we have to deal with talking to people who talk nonsense. But there's a real pleasure in talking nonsense. That's hoyless means just like lightheadedness, frivolousness. Leitsoinus means scoffing, which is the idea of breaking everything apart. Hisparus is boasting, which is like making yourself out to be something that you're not. Divine Bataillon, like we just said, is talking shtuyot. Okay, atzlus, v'atzvus miyasoid ha'afa. From the element of earth comes these two intrinsically linked pleasures. Believe it or not, depression is a pleasure, and laziness is a pleasure, and they're both linked with each other. Depression in Tanya is not defined as an emotion. This is super important. Depression in Tanya is described as a lack of emotion, a vacuum of emotion, an inability to experience emotion, and in some cases, and this is why it's linked with laziness, a laziness to experience an emotion, a lack of life. It's a lack of emotion. It is not an emotion. Depression is not an emotion. It's a lack thereof. So the opposite of depression is simcha. Yeah, that's alive. But also the opposite of depression is avelus. Avelus, again, it's alive. It hurts. It's on the left side, but it's alive. Avelus, your heart is pumping. That's why Tisha B'Av is a day of such tremendous spiritual energy where you can really change yourself. That's why we tear our clothes when we're in mourning, because you can change your behavior, because there's so much energy available. You can begin afresh. You can completely flip it all around with the energy that comes from Avelus, as we see people do. And the same with Simcha as well. Simcha is also energy. So the opposite of Simcha is, it like makes a triangle. So you've got Simcha and Avelus up here. And then down here, you've got depression. So depression is the opposite of Simcha and the opposite of Avelus.
Famous broken heart?
No, Avelus is not broken heart. No, Avelus is mourning. They're very different, very, very different. Very different. Avelus could be called Marira Salim, bitterness of heart. Yeah, not broken heartedness. Okay, so those are also pleasures. Those are also considered pleasures. It's a pleasure of just nothingness, not of nothing. That's really the pleasure of from the ruach. This is a pleasure of inactivity. The pleasure of like when you walk in and you see your 13-year-old daughter on the couch. She couldn't look any more like, I couldn't look that relaxed even if I tried. Okay. The Gam Midas Tovus. This is very important. Gam Midas Tovus Shabbateva Kol Yisrael B'Toidasam. Also, now we've just said in this egotistical soul, this this independent, selfish soul, it has all of these selfish negative traits or pleasures, whatever. It also, in the Jew, it has also some positive things, because the soul of the Jew is going to say, Gam midas tovus shebeteva kol yisod b'toidasam, that also the good midas of the Jew that are of his nature, that are inherited, k'moy rachmanas gemilas hasadim, Baus Memenu, like mercy and loving kindness that come also from this same soul. Why? Ki b'Yisrael nefesh zuda klipehi meklipas noiga. This nefesh comes from the klipa that's called klipas noiga, the iridescent, shiny klipa, the translucent klipa. Sheyesh begam kain toiv, because in the klipa that this Jewish nefesh comes from, it has also in it toiv. And it comes from the secret of the eight Sadas Tovra, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay, again, a lot to unpack. So, definition of good and evil in Tanya. Again, these are massive things. We define good as selfless. We define evil as selfish. That is as simple as it is. You could also call good surrendered. You could also call good transparent, whereas Ra would be called opaque. Okay, it's the concept of selfish and selfless. So this soul has an element of selflessness. He said it comes from what's called klipas noiga. Yeah, we'll explain that in a moment as well. But it has good mixed in. And this is amazing. So what are the traits of the Jew? The good traits of the Jew is Rachmanas and Gemilas Chasadim. And the Gemara says another one, Baishanas. He has shame. We can speak about all three of them, even though the Rebbe doesn't mention shame. But all three of them, Gemilas Chasadim, Rachmanas, mercy, and shame. you realize all three of those are either a reaction to or a revelation of the fact that you appreciate the reality of another. Selfish means the ultimate level of selfishness in technical terms would be a narcissistic psychopath. Meaning it's all about me and you don't exist. That really is the technical term for a Russia Gumor in 2024. We would call him an absolute Russia. We would call a narcissistic psychopath. It's all about me and you don't exist. The narcissism is it's all about me, and psychopathy is the inability to comprehend, apprehend, to experience the reality of another. So we all have varying degrees of that. So goodness would be the opposite. Utter goodness would be no sense of self whatsoever and an absolute experience of your reality. I put you ahead of me in every single thing. That doesn't mean that I'm like a doormat. It doesn't mean that at all. So these, it's beautiful that the Rebbe uses these three, well, he uses two, but it's the same inyan, that the revelation or the expression or the reaction of the fact that you appreciate the reality of another is, I have mercy on you. If I didn't appreciate that you exist, I wouldn't have mercy on you. Gemilas Hasadim, I do kindness for you. If I didn't appreciate that you exist, I wouldn't be kind to you. I wouldn't do anything for you. And by shanus, embarrassment, if I didn't feel that you exist, I would do whatever I want in front of you. I would have no shame. You see, like these very coarse people, they have no shame. Why? Because you don't really exist. It's like doing something lewd in front of a plastic soldier, in front of in front of nothing. So you could do what you want. That's the brazenness of the door. So the nefesh of Bahamis of the Jew appreciates the reality of another. It actually appreciates the reality of another. That's a chiddush. That's a chiddush, and that means that it's not totally raw. It's not completely opaque, completely self-involved. And that's because it comes from what's called the Klipas Noiga. I'm going to say this quickly. We'll talk about it a lot more in chapter 6 and 7. Klipas Noiga, we said Klipa is a peel, yeah, like a husk. So you've got, let's say, two kinds of peels. You've got the shell of a walnut, and then you've got the peel of a grape. If you hold a grape up to the light, you'll see the light comes through. It's a very, very different thing to the peel, the shell of a walnut. But they're both shells. They are both klipas. They both have a sense of self. So when you look out of a transparent window, there's no sense of the window doesn't allude to itself in any way, shape, or form. It just says, "See through me." Look at the view. Doesn't say anything about itself. A wall is opaque. Yeah, you look at a wall, you don't even know there's a view behind it. You have no idea. It says, "Look at me. Look at me." That's all there is. Yeah. Then there's this in between level, which is called Klipas Noiga, which is called the translucent klipa. Translucent means like the milky frosted glass you have in your bathroom. It allows some level of light to pass through, but it doesn't allow for detail, and there's madrigas as well, yeah? So that's the level from that klipa comes our soul. So it is selfish. I mean, it's primarily selfish. You're in your bathroom and you're looking at the frosted glass. Is that glass saying to you, "Don't look at me, look out there"? Is that what the glass is saying to you? No. The transparent glass is saying, look behind me. Yeah, I'm not here, just look through there. The milky glass is saying, "Look, I'm here, look at me." But there is something behind me as well. So it's selfish and selfless. The transparent glass, which you would call Kedusha, is selfless. And the opaque wall is utterly selfish. You with me? So I coined the term, it's my own invention. I call that middle level self-full, not selfish. It's just a helpful way of talking about it, but we'll talk about that later. But so that level I call self-full. Okay, now we're gonna finish the chapter here. But this is big, okay? Masha Ein Kain. That's by the Nefesh Bahamis of a Yehudi. Masha Ein Kain Nefashos Umois Oivdei Gululim. This isn't the case for the life-giving soul of the nations Oivdei Gululim who serve idolatry. Yeah? Hein Mishah Klipas Tameus. Their nefesh comes from what's called the Klipas Tameus, which is what we described as that opaque level. It's completely opaque. It has no concept of good, no concept of the other. It's totally selfish. Now, don't forget, that doesn't have to look like Adolf Hitler, Yamach Shemo, or Ted Bundy at all. It can actually take on the guise of a very nice person who's building hospitals and caring for the sick. It's just about him. It's not about the other. So don't take this out of context and think it means malevolent, like dark, sadistic evil. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means ultimate selfishness. They have no good in them whatsoever, meaning they are ultimately selfish, and that is the way that most of modern psychology describes the human being. He, in truth, is unable to do something altruistic. It's only a modern thing that people are saying, like a person can actually, it's like not a modern thing, like a more elevated kind of spiritual way of seeing the world. But when like basing it on Freudian psychology, that you can't do something not for yourself. Dig down deep enough, and you're going to find yourself there, motivating the reason why you're doing it, which makes a lot of sense. It really does make a lot of sense. So what we're saying here is we're not actually denigrating the Umoisa Olam. That's just how it should be. That's what nature dictates. Everything you do should be for yourself. That doesn't mean it has to be bad. It could be very, very good, but you're doing it because you want to do it. The Yehudi, the Ish Yisrael, that is an anomaly in the creation. That is something different. So we're not denigrating anybody else at all. We are in fact talking about the miraculous nature of Am Yisrael, of their physicality, So he says, and this is how he explains it. V'kol tivu da'av b'tov klal, k'mo shekaseh b'eitz chaim shamem tespek gimel. V'kol tivu da'avdil ha'umois oivdei gululim. All of the good that the umois, the nations do, that are oivdei gululim, that worship idolatry, l'gamaihu avdil. It's for themselves. Look at the East of Gemara, al pasuk chesed le'umem chatus, and he brings a pasuk from Mishlei from the Gemara that it says the chesed of the nations is a chatus, which has, in fact, in the Gemara has a lot of different perushim, but this is the one that Alter Rebbe chooses. Shekol tzedakah v'chesed she'umois oivdei gululim she'oisin, that all of the chesed and the tzedakah that the umois do, yeah, the ones who worship idolatry. It's for self-aggrandizement. And I'm going to quote, I have a quote here in my Tanya that I printed from Tony Robbins. Everyone knows Tony Robbins? Yeah? Listen to this quote. See if you can catch the irony in it. It's gorgeous. It summarizes the whole thing. Because he's a really, really good guy. Yeah? He does a lot of good for a lot of people. He's great. So listen to what he said in his book. What's it called? The
Awaken the Giant.
Awaken the Giant Within. In the books they quote. They have little quotes throughout the book of Mother Teresa and Gandhi and all. Winston Churchill. All these books. Yeah, he quoted himself in Awaken the Giant Within. One quote. I read the whole book. One quote he quoted himself. Anthony Robbins. It says like that. The quote is like this. Only those who have learned the power of sincere and selfless contribution experience life's deepest joy, true fulfillment. I'll say it again. Detect the irony. Only those who have learned the power of sincere and selfless contribution experience life's deepest joy, true fulfillment. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's Givaldic. That is Givaldic. So we'll finish on this. This is very, very important, okay? So Ty, you have to run, yeah? But just wait, okay, good. Just wait for this, because this is super important, okay? What is the purpose of the Umas Oilam? And what is the purpose of Am Yisrael? Lemaisa. What are they here? Because we know we're not here for the same thing. We got 613 mitzvahs. They got 7 mitzvahs. Lemaisa, what's the difference? This is what I learned from my Rebbe, along with everything else. The nature of the Umas Oilam, their God-given nature is selfish. It's a natural created nature, but they have an intellect, unlike an animal. Their job is to use their intellect to come to the recognition of the reality of another human being. I'll say that again. The purpose, the tachlis of the Umas Oilam in their own avodah is to use their intellect, which is not selfish. Intellect is objective. 1 + 1 = 2. That's it, finished. There's no subjectivity there. There's no self there. So it's to use their God-given intellect to educate themselves to come to the level where they actually appreciate the reality of another. And the ultimate level would be that that person uses their intellect to appreciate the reality of the other much more than their own personal reality. Masha'ain Kain Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael, although we've fallen because of being in Galus for so long, a lot of us have to do that already. But the default setting of an Am Yisrael, the default setting of an Ish Yisrael, is that she appreciates the reality of another just by way of how they were created. Because they came from this iridescent, this translucent clip. We come from this translucent clipper. Our animal side, our human side comes from this translucent clipper, which already appreciates the reality of another. As we said, we have Rahmanas, we're Rahmanim going Salim by Shanim. We already appreciate the reality of another, or we should do, unless we've fallen down and we developed a second nature, which definitely happens. So what's the purpose of the Jew? The purpose of the Jew is to use his neshama, not his intellect, his neshama to come to the recognition of the Creator more than himself. That is the two avoiders of human beings in this world. You have the human being whose job is to appreciate the reality of another human over his own reality. And the job of an Ish Yisrael is to appreciate the reality of the Creator over his own reality, not using his intellect, using his neshama, which appreciates God. That isn't natural to the Jew. It isn't natural to the animal soul of the Jew. The animal soul of the Jew does not naturally appreciate God. It can naturally appreciate another human being. So it comes out like this. The fight of the Umas Oilam is between Behema and Adam. The fight of the Yid is between Adam and Elokus. It's the difference between fighting to be a human over an animal and fighting to be godly over a human. That is the difference, how I've understood it, that I received from my Rebbe, between Am Yisrael and the Umas Oilam. And that's how the Rebbe explained it in a very, very, very bekitzer, in a few words at the end of Perek 1. So that's Perek Rishon of Tanya, B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, Shpi Zoicha. Sei gesund, Kota.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.